Hello, my name is Snowlight. This is my Warcraft University, a YouTube series intended to give new and mid-tier players simple concepts towards playing World of Warcraft at a higher level. In this video we will discuss roles, ranges, and resources. Up to this point in the series, we have been focusing on the user interface, a critical part of the Warcraft experience to be sure. At this point, I believe we've put together enough fundamentals so that we can shift into the game itself. That is to say, the fundamentals of World of Warcraft. First up, let's discuss roles. I'll use football as an analogy. In WoW, as with many other MMOs, there are three primary roles to choose from: DPS, Tank, and Healer. The first and most popular role is the DPS role. The term DPS comes from damage per second, one of the metrics used to measure how much damage a character can do. While all roles can do some damage, this role specializes in pumping out big DPS numbers. This is most like the skill players in football. The quarterback, running backs, and receivers go out on the field and try to put up the most points possible so that their team can win the game. In the same way, the DPS role tries to pump out as much damage as possible so that their team can find similar success. In Warcraft, all classes have at least one talent specialization that allows them to be the DPS role. Second up is the tank role. This is very much like the offensive lineman role. In football, the offensive line is built around one premise: don't let the other team get to your quarterback or other skill players. The thought process is, if the bad guys are hitting you, they aren't hurting your teammates. To that end, your job is to be as beefy and immovable as possible, so that your teammates are free to do what they are focused on, like scoring touchdowns in the football analogy. Tanking is not the flashy role in Warcraft, but it can be one of the most critical. Just like with a solid offensive line, a solid tank will never be the flashiest role, but it can single-handedly be the difference between victory or defeat. Third, the healer role. In Warcraft, healers are there to restore the team's health throughout each battle in the game. This would be very much like trainers, medical staff, and other support staff that help keep offensive football players on the field, and pump them back up while the defense gives them a break. As a healer, your job is to keep your team's hit points as high as possible throughout a boss fight, so that your team can take down all the bad guys. As with the sideline staff in a football game, the expectations for a healer character are based around the success of the team more than a measurable statistic, DPS charts or touchdowns, for example. That is to say, if you kept them on the field so they could win the game, you did your job. So, where does the defense fit in this analogy? Well, it doesn't. I didn't promise it would be a perfect analogy after all. Next up, ranges. All characters will fall into one of two classifications, either melee or ranged. Melee characters are generally characters that use swords, shields, daggers, fist weapons, or other similar types of traditional weaponry that require you to stay at arm's length of the bad guys in order to fulfill your role in the team, or in the case of some druids, more primal weapons like teeth and claws. In Warcraft, all tanks and about half of the possible DPS specializations are considered melee characters. In contrast, a ranged character, also called a long-ranged character, is any character that can fulfill their role while staying further than arm's length away. Characters that use ranged weapons like bows and guns, alongside spellcaster classes and healers, are generally classified as ranged characters. And finally, resources. There are primarily three kinds of resource: mana, rage, or energy, and a number of class-specific resources. Mana is the most common resource and generally equates to how much juice you have in order to fulfill your main role. As you cast spells or use abilities, your mana goes down a little bit at a time. When you run out, you are no longer able to use those same spells or abilities. This generally gives you the ability to exhaust your mana pool quickly in bursts or slowly through slower, sustained usage. In contrast, energy is a much more limited resource that can be exhausted very quickly and then restored nearly as quickly. An energy character can use a few abilities very quickly before having to wait a short amount of time, usually just a few seconds, while their energy is restored. Because of this, an energy character will never completely run out of their ability to continue fulfilling their role like their mana-based counterparts. As a side note, energy is only observed in DPS roles. Third, Rage is a common resource across a few classes. Unlike the other resources that regenerate slowly or quickly over time, Rage is generated entirely by combat-based actions. That is to say, taking damage or using abilities generate Rage. Once there is enough Rage, more powerful abilities generally become available at the cost of spending some of that Rage you've accumulated. Beyond these three primary resources, some classes use their own kind of resource. An example would be Shadow Priests, which accumulate insanity towards entering a temporary void form, where they deal increased damage. Death Knights balance the expending of runes and their runic power, where each of their abilities consumes one or the other of these two resources. Monks tend to balance energy and chi in a similar way. That covers some of the basics behind how World of Warcraft is intended to be played. In the next lesson, we'll look at each of the classes currently available in the game at a high level, and what each class can bring to the game. And with that, we wrap up this topic. If you found this useful, please leave a like on the video or a comment with any questions or ideas so we can continue to work on this series. The subscribe button and the bell are there so you can see when new videos come out, if that is your desire. As always, please be positive in your guilds and help make WoW a fun place for everyone to play. Goodbye for now.